Good evening.
Couple times. How are you?
Hashem. Okay.
Hello, Rabbi.
Good evening. So we read the tour yesterday. We said Velo Yaneh Amen Chatufa. So we said, right, that there's several types of amen that you have to refrain from answering. One is when you say it without pronouncing the syllables properly, too fast, too humble, too bashful. So you got to say it, with the proper pronunciation, proper syllables. So it says regarding that Bet Yosef, Perek Shlosha Shachlu, it says over there in the Brachot, Mem Zayin Amud Bet, Tanan Rabanan, right? There's a Braita, En Onin Lo Amen Chatufa Belo An Ketufa. Don't do these kinds of things, right? Amens, Chatufa, Ketufa, Belo Amen Yetoma, and also Yetoma. These are three types of amens that you want to avoid doing. Now, Minam Yerushalmi, we say in Yerushalmi, Ezoi Amen Yetoma. What's called Amen Yetoma? What is that? Yetoma means literally in Hebrew orphan, right? So he says we're talking about a person who's obligated to bless. He answers, but he doesn't know what he's answering. Right? So what does that mean, by the way? What it means is what we explained yesterday, that he doesn't know which blessing was said. He's answering amen, so he doesn't really know what he's doing. This is the problem. Rashi explains Yetoma Shaloma B'Shama Bracha Ela Shashama Shomin Amen. So Rashi explains it a little bit differently, but it's the same idea. That he didn't hear the blessing, but all he heard was people answering Amen, right? So he said, "Oh, gee, let me go along for the ride, right? Let me go along with them, join them." So he goes, he says Amen also, but he doesn't know what they're answering Amen to. He didn't hear the blessing. Now which we say in Masachet Sukkah Nun Amud Bet. That in Alexandria, in Egypt, right, they used to wave these flags. in order that people should know which blessing is being said. כשהגיע על לענות אמן, את לענות אמן, the time came to answer amen. Alma lo shama. So you see from there they didn't hear the blessing, but nevertheless he's answering anyway. So he answers right that this is different. Why? Because they know what blessing was said, even though they didn't hear it. So that's okay. The problem was over there, they weren't hearing the voice because, it was like a big stadium, so you couldn't hear people so well. That's what it says also in Tosfot. בפרק 3 שאכלו, נס פרק, אין זה נמוד, ובחליל מה יראה? היו יודעים באיזה ברכה החזן עומד. So again, right, we're saying that they knew which bracha was being said by the Chazan. That's why they were answering. Omnam lo hayu shom'in oto, but says Tosfot again, right? They weren't hearing it; they just knew it. How would they know? Because the flag was being waved, the banner, whatever. Right? Okay, good. So, but here we're talking about something else. We're talking about he doesn't know at all that the blessing is being said. So that's a different case. There, you shouldn't answer at all because you don't know what's going on. Okay, so he says, מתפלל באיזו ברכה היא עומד, אלא עונה אחרים בלא שמיעה ובלא ידיעה, וכן כתבו התלמידי רבנו. Same thing with these rabbis, they all wrote the same explanation here. ונראה למורי תרץ דעתם, so it says, it seems to my rabbi to answer this dilemma, right, this inconsistency here. How do you answer it? Again, as we said, right, מתוך החיה מותר לפני שכבר התפללו כל אחד ואחד, because each one had already prayed, וכיוון שלא היו עושים לחיוב, and they weren't doing it for obligation, שכבר יצאו ידי חובתם, because they already fulfilled their obligation, לא נחוש אם לא שמעו הברכה. So there, we're not concerned if they didn't hear the blessing. אלא כשמתכוון לצאת בחיוב בעניית אמן. Only in a case where, right, they're fulfilling their obligation. So there, in a case like that, they would have to actually hear the blessing. It's not enough just to know what was said. Interesting. Okay, so צריך שישמע את הברכה. וגם הראש והזכיר תירוץ זה. Rosh also mentioned this answer, but תירוץ הבטר, the last answer that he gave, והערוך בערך אמן, and the Aruch, right, says over there, כתב דקשיא לרבנו ניסים, right? There's a question that Rabbeinu Nisim has regarding this. He the Perek HaChalil, that question, right? Again, same thing. That Gemara there that talks about the that big shul. Uparik Ha the Tanya answers, En onin amen yitoma, that which it says, right? Don't answer. Amen, which is an orphaned amen. Meaning what? It has no father, right? You don't know who the father is. You don't know what blessing was said. So he says the rabbis of Israel explain that talking about where he's not obligated, he's obligated for that blessing. And that which over there in that Gemara says the answer amen because they're waving the flags, waving the banners, whatever. We're talking about reading the Sefer Torah. Oh, okay. So he answers a little bit differently than the answers we saw previously. V'lo betfilah, it's not talking about prayers there. V'lo b'davar sheshliach tzibur motzi et harabim. Also, we're not talking about something where the shliach tzibur fulfills the obligation of the community. That's the way it's explained in Yerushalmi. Where is that? In Sukkah. בימה של עץ באמצע. בימה של עץ באמצע. עמד אחד מהם לקרוא בתורה. So it says over there that one of them got up to read the Torah. והיה ממונה מניף בסודרים. And the appointed person there, right, the shamash, whatever. He was waving these banners, right, to tell people where they are. And onin amen, and they're answering amen. Amar Rav Kohen Tzedek Gaon. This rabbi says, Amar chayavin atzibur lishtok lishmoa kol bracha ubracha. Also, right, they have to be silent, as we said yesterday, and hear every blessing, right, with the repetition. Mipi Chazan, from the Chazan. Kach yanu amen, and then they answer amen. Kol ha'one amen v'lo shama bracha hi amen yitoma. So he says, as a general rule, the rule is that if you answer amen and didn't hear the blessing, that's an orphaned amen. So no good, right? Yeah. Let's go on. So it says, Tosfot beper kachalil. The Tosfot says, Katru kol divrei Aruch. They wrote the words of the Aruch. Umashma leRabbeinu, so it implies to the tour, the Rav Kohen tzedek ate liafluge teutza leRabbeinu Nisim. That this rabbi is coming to argue with Rabbeinu Nisim. The maflig ben shehu chayav beota bracha. He differentiates between if he's liable for that blessing, he's obligated, and mishenu chayav, the one who's not obligated ba. Shafilu bracha sheinu mechayavin ba. Even a blessing where they're not obligated. Kegon shekvar itpalu enami brachot. For instance, they already prayed, right? Enami, or alternatively, brachot Sefer Torah, right? Blessings of the Sefer Torah. So he says, nevertheless, the community is obligated to be silent. And to hear every blessing. From the Chazan. And then you answer amen. Again, right? He says, if you answer amen, you didn't hear the blessing, even though he's not obligated to bless that blessing, amen yitomahi, it's called the right orphaned amen. Now which we have this difficulty, right, in the discrepancy with from that Gemara, that other Gemara. You have to answer, right, that they knew the number of the blessings, right? Which number is which blessing? So they knew because they knew the number of the blessings. That's another way to answer it, right? As opposed to the banners that we said before, right? It's all the same. It's all the same concept. Ezo bracha yomer b'chemo sheteretz Rashi. It's like Rashi explains, but Tosfot b'perek shlosha shachlu, like Tosfot. So he says, now we understand the words of Rabbeinu, the Tur. In the beginning he wrote, Shepiresh Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah explained, that which we say, right, that he shouldn't answer the orphaned amen. That means in case where he didn't fulfill his obligation. Amen. He answers amen. In order to fulfill his obligation. If he already fulfills his obligation beforehand, so then we don't care about that. No problem. Even though Rabbeinu Yonah didn't explain like that, in order to just he did that because he wanted to reconcile the discrepancy. But the Rabbeinu didn't answer this question like that. From the Gemara, because since it explains the same way in Yerushalmi, and so we don't need that right anymore. It's the same thing. No, the answer like that. So he said, Rabbeinu Yonah, then why did he bring that? Because he wanted to be more convincing, right? Having more sources, whatever. So then he writes afterwards that this rabbi implies, even though you already fulfills obligation, lo yane amen yatoma. You shouldn't answer an orphaned amen. But it's varazok kasha. So he says, according to this reasoning, right, it's difficult. Not Gemara again. צריך לתרץ זה לא מקרה אמן יתמה. So we have to answer that it's only called orphan amen, כשאינו יודע באיזה ברכה עומד, only when he doesn't know which blessing is being said. המברך, אלא עונה אחר האחרים בלא שמיעה. They're just answering like with the others. Like a little tuki, you know, a little, whatever, just answering, like, you know, like a monkey, doesn't know what's going on, and without any knowledge. But if he knows which blessing was actually concluded right now, even though he didn't hear from his mouth, he can answer amen. So that's how we explain also that Gemara over there. Because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't really have to be able to differentiate like this. At all. So therefore, Rabbeinu the Torah writes in this reasoning. This Gemara. Rabbeinu Agadol Maria Avuha. Right, this rabbi, since he saw that Rabbeinu Yonah explained like this, in order to answer this Gemara, answer the discrepancy, Katav al Divrei Rabbeinu, he wrote regarding the Torah, Ve'atema milashon mechaber. So he says, I'm wondering what he did over here, why he wrote the way he wrote. He brought afterwards, right, from the Sukkah, like I said, in the synagogue, for example, regarding the synagogue in Egypt. Maybe that seems like he's bringing it now. But he says all that we explained is also built on this premise. It's according to, it says the way I wrote comes out good. It says also I wrote this rabbi. He wrote the explanation of Rabbeinu Yonah. That which we said you shouldn't answer orphan amen. That means only when he's not fulfilling obligation. But then he said, Rav Cohen says, he doesn't agree with that. So he says, regarding prayers that they already prayed, they already fulfilled obligation. They're still obligated to answer amen. That so says also in the Aruch, Mishmeh Rav Cohen. The name of Rav Cohen. Rav Cohen, he says, according to this rabbi, the Perek Chalil, Gemara, he b'kriyat Sefer Torah, talking about reading the Sefer Torah. Not with prayers and not with something which Shliach Tzibur fulfills the obligation of the community. That's what it says in the Gemara also. Ibn Maraba. Of the which means the Yerushalmi Gemara, right? The Perek Chalil Ma'ale B'Kel Sefer Torah. And over there it's talking about Sefer Torah. The Gemara the Od Yesh Netaretz Chiluk Acher. So he says we can also make a different differentiation. Kemo she'avia mechaber, like the author, right? The Torah brings the Amen Yatomah Hu Kesheno Yodia Bezer Bracha Mesayim. The Amen Yatomah, the orphan, the Amen is like when he doesn't know which blessing is being finished. And the Aruch made this by differentiation in the second answer they gave. And the Talmidim of Rabbeinu Yonah they did the third answer. Then the Barav Nochimdi, so it says his words are not good to me. Since he holds that Rav Cohen, right, is arguing on Rabbeinu, the Torah, Rabbeinu Nisim, I'm sorry, not the Torah, the Rabbeinu Nisim. Like it says, Rabbeinu, if so, right, all that he didn't hear the blessing and answers Amen, even though it's a blessing for for benefit, some kind of like pleasure or whatever. So what does that mean? Only the person who blesses is really getting any benefit from it. So he says, isn't it that he himself, right, the person who's answering Amen, is not getting any benefit? So he's not really obligated there. Amen is still answering Amen is orphan. בכל שכן ברכות התורה, all the more so blessings of Torah, דאפשר לממר בהוא, and say regarding them, דחייבים הציבור בהם לשומעם, that the communities are liable to hear them, just like they're obligated to hear the blessing of the reading of the Torah. So there's no differentiation, there's no machloket between Rabbeinu Nisim and Rabbeinu Cohen. Rab Cohen, Sharei Harav Azar, because it says the Tur, Omer de Rab Cohen b'tfilah, when it comes to Rab Cohen in tfilah and prayers, amen. Even though they only follow the Gershon, you still have to answer amen about brachot, but when it comes to blessings of Torah, the Torah, they're not obligated with them. Over there he answers amen, without even hearing it, and also without any knowledge. The same thing as the Khalil, the Gemara, that they were waving those banners. That's the same thing as Rabbeinu Nisim. So therefore, how did the rabbi write Zal? Like the Rab Kohen Amar, the Rab Kohen said, Amar she'en zeh abdel emet. This is not a good differentiation. The mashma the polyglot dat Rabbeinu Yonah, that implies the argues Rabbeinu Yonah, Yerushalmi, shehu dat Rabbeinu Nisim, which is the same as Rabbeinu Nisim. So it says, therefore, it seems to me, it says Bet Yosef, Te'im ita ad Rab Kohen leifluge ala Rabbeinu Nisim. And if it's so that this rabbi argues Rabbeinu Nisim, afilu bebrachot she'eno chayav b'hem, even blessings that he's not obligated with them, klal savar dehave amen yitoma, and he holds that it's still orphaned amen. The en sarich lomar bebrachot haTorah. I don't need to tell you regarding the blessings of the Torah. Yosef and things like this. Mash katav chayavin hatzibur lishtok lishmo kol bracha ubracha. Now what she said, right, that the tzibur has to hear every blessing, mipia chazan from the chazan. Lav davka mipia chazan doesn't mean from the chazan, ela kumar mipia mivarech, the one who blessings. Because there's no difference between blessings of the prayers and blessings of the Torah, or brachot and all the other blessings. Regarding all of them, he holds the havya amen yitoma, that it's orphan amen. Kol she'oneh amen belo shmiya. He's answering amen without hearing the blessing. Even though he's not obligated with that blessing, but then seems like that's the way of the tour. B'divrei Rav Kohen, regarding the opinion of Rav Kohen. Therefore, he needed to answer that Gemara that they used to count out the blessings and know which one it is. You know which blessing is doing. When he says doesn't apply like that in Tosfot, they wrote difficult to Rabbeinu Nisim, that which we said in this blessing, in this Gemara, and onin amen yetoma, that we don't answer often amen, umparesh b'shem Rabbeinu Abanan. He explains the name of the rabbis, the Bnei Ma'araba of the west, right, which is the Eretz Israel, she'al min shehu chayav bracha kamar. He's talking about somebody who's obligated to bless. Okay, very good. Let's see how much we got left here. Okay, there's still a little bit more left. Let's see. And that which they were answering amen. Regarding waving the banners, that's talking about the waving of the reading of the Torah. Not regarding the prayers. Not regarding the shliach tzibur, right, to fulfill the obligation of the community. That's what it says in Yerushalmi. Bima asher etz be'emtza. Right, regarding this parak. Now Kohen Tzedek Gaon Amar, this rabbi says, Chayavim Matzibur. Community is obligated lishtok v'lishmoa kol bracha u'bracha. They have to be silent and hear every blessing. Mipia chazan v'chazan. V'achar kach yanu amen. And then they answer amen. Shetichlei bracha. Once the blessing is finished. Mipia mivarech, from the blesser. The Od Yesh Lamar. The rest to say also, Yodim hayu lechaven seder brachot. They also know how to count out the blessings, as we said. So they know which one it is. So it seems from their words, Rav Kohen lo tzrichin the Talmud say According to this rabbi, we don't need to answer hi Tirutza Deodim, this differentiation. They knew how to know which blessing it was by counting them. Siddur Brachot. So it says, seems to me that they hold that this rabbi is not coming to argue or differentiate. On the contrary, Rabbeinu Nissim brings the source from his words. Rabbeinu Nissim halil, because Rabbeinu Nissim qualified that Gemara b'brachot Kriyat Torah regarding bringing the Torah dafka aval b'brachat tefillah. When it comes to the blessings of the prayers, lo haba efshar lekshue. You can't really ask the Amai Amar de b'brachot tefillah. No, that why do you say that regarding the blessings of the prayers? It's not so. Because when the Shliach Tzibur repeats the repetition, because most people have already prayed. They're in full obligation. So they're not really obligated to answer with those blessings. So he says, therefore, if so, they were able to answer right those blessings, amen, without hearing, without knowledge, just by waving the banners. From here it brings the source which Rabbeinu Cohen wrote, that your community is obligated to be silent and hear. Means to say that even though the community already prayed, they full obligation. Since it's the rabbi's decree that the Shliach Tzibur should do the repetition, to full obligation the ones who don't know how to pray. So therefore, even the ones who know how to pray are liable to be silent. And hear every blessing. They answer amen. And when they're not mindful of the blessing of the Chazan, it looks like it's a blessing in vain. So you see from there that the blessings of the prayers, the Chazarat, Shliach Tzibur Havu. We're talking about the repetition of the Shliach Tzibur. It's obligation. And even though the community already prayed. Therefore he says, you can't answer amen with them by just by waving the banner. By itself, aval, when it comes to blessings of the Torah, the tzibur is not obligated with them. Even though it's the decree of the sages, to read the Torah in the community, but he said the blessings are not for the people, not for the community. Rather, what it is the person who's reading the Torah should be blessing. And since the community are not really obligated in those blessings, therefore they can answer amen. By way of just waving the banners. Even though they didn't hear the blessings. They don't also know, they also don't know. It's the first blessing and last blessing. That's how Tosfot explains Aruch. So he says, nevertheless, even though this rabbi, he's not really arguing with this rabbi, but we already said, right, that these rabbis, but they don't make this differentiation, whether he's obligated in the blessing or not. But even if he's not obligated, he's not right, you're not allowed to answer amen. Also, when he knows which blessing he's finishing, even though he didn't hear it, he's obligated. He answers amen after it. It's not called orphan amen. That's what it says though. These rabbis, they had the Lefi writes explicitly. The Lefi Perush there, according to this Perush, even if they didn't full elevation yet, they're not hearing the blessing of the Chazan. You know there was a bracha there. Since if he knows which blessing he's doing, it's considered like you heard it. That was what Rabbeinu was explaining. Rabbi Cohen said it. So it says, comes out like this, right? Conclusion. That according to all these opinions, right? Whichever one you choose, right? Whether you're lenient or whatever, stringent, Shem lo shama bracha comes out like this, right? If you didn't hear the blessing, you know which blessing is being said. Afilu im hu mechuyab ba, even though it's obligated there, oneh amen, he answers amen, when he answers, he fulfills obligation. And that Rashi, according to Rashi, but Tosfot, according to Tosfot. Perek Shlosha Shachlu, over there in this command. Udat Rabbeinu Yonah, but according to Rabbeinu Yonah, Rabbeinu Nisim, according to these rabbis, eno oneh amen dehabe oneh amen yetama. You shouldn't answer amen in a case like that. It's an orphan amen, me'achar shehu mechuyab ba, because since he's obligated in it, ve'im eno mechuyab be'ota bracha, but if he's not obligated in that blessing, ve'lo shama ota, he didn't hear, ve'gam lo yada eza bracha hu bebrech, he also doesn't know which blessing he's blessing. Ladat Rabbeinu Yonah, Rabbeinu Nisim, according to these rabbis, oneh amen, he answers amen, achar she'onim, after the people answer, ve'lo havya amen yetoma, it's not really considered to be orphan amen, me'achar she'eno mechuyab be'ota bracha, since he's not obligated to say that blessing. That Rashi, according to Tosfot, Rashi and Tosfot, ve'eno oneh amen, eno oneh amen, he doesn't answer amen, dehavya amen yetoma, that would be right, orphan amen. Ubrachot atfilah shechozer shliach tzibur. So he says the blessings of the prayer that the shliach tzibur repeats. Sorry, yeah. According to one who to the one who already prayed, that Rabbeinu, according to Rabbeinu, and Dinaki Birkat Chava, it's not considered like an obligation. But that Rambam Kedat Yerushalmi. So now he brings the Rambam, right? It's like the Yerushalmi says, he holds like the Yerushalmi. Ketiv Rabbeinu Nisim also like this rabbi, Rabbeinu Yonah. So they all seem to agree with one opinion. Katab Perek Aleph Minchot Brachot, because he writes in the first perek, Kol mi shelo shama bracha. He didn't hear the blessing. Shechayav that he's obligated to say. Lo yaneh amen. He shouldn't answer amen. Bichlal onim the one who answers, the ones who answer. Mashma de lo kaptinan ela bebracha shenitchayev ba. So implies that we're only right stringent about this regarding a blessing that he's obligated to say. But if he's not obligated to say it, then we don't care. So he says, since the Rambam holds like Rabbeinu Nisim, the Rabbeinu Yonah, the Gama Rosh Katav Ken the Tirutza, and also the Rosh wrote like this in the Patra, last answer. And Korash Yerushalmi Kedibrahem, and also Yerushalmi says like that. So it says that's the halacha, right? Oh, good. Okay, so there you go, right? That's the halacha. Katuv be'orchot chaim, right? It says in Orchot Chaim. The Shuvah Lebeinu B'hai, Shuvah of this rabbi, Sheshama Rabim Yisrael Shomim Amen Cheskatan She'en Onim Amen Ela Achar Sheshama Bracha Ketikna. So he says, I heard from people they answer Amen, and they hold that they don't answer Amen only in the case where they only answer Amen in the case where he heard the blessing. So we're not concerned about orphan blessing there. When he hears from Kedusha, Rashai Lanot Amen. He's permitted to answer Amen. Also Kaddish and Baruch Hu. If he heard this individual saying Amen, didn't hear the blessing. So then there's concern about orphan blessing. So therefore, he's not allowed to answer Amen there. Okay, very good. So I guess we'll stop there. There's still a lot more here. A lot more, but there's still more. So I guess we'll take that the next time. And do the Shulchan Aruch also next time, Bezat Hashem. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness. Chazak Baruch. Bezat Hashem, we will be victorious. Enemies will fall. The outer enemy and the inner enemy, all the enemies will fall, Bezat Hashem. Whether it's the Yetzer Hara, or the enemies, the physical enemies, or the spiritual enemies, whoever they may be, they will all fall, and Mashiach will come. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll have Geulah. You know, as I posted right a few days ago, last week, whatever it was. It says in Talmud Yerushalmi, the Geulah, you know, is like not something really quick. So what does that mean? It comes like step by step. You know, it keeps on like getting bigger and widening. You know. So that means, you know, we already started the process pretty much, you know, so we're on the way. And B'ezrat Hashem, you know, we'll get there. We'll get there sooner or later, that's the way it is. We'll visit Hashem.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, of course, visit Hashem. That's the way it is, It's just a matter of time, matter of tshuva, to do teshuvah.
She broke the waters,
She broke the waters. What does that mean?
meaning when a woman gives birth, she breaks the waters, and then I guess she gives
Oh,
certain
oh, oh,
instructions, and then
oh. Okay, well, you said the magic words there. My niece is supposed to give birth any day now, so I guess we'll talk about the breaking the waters then. Bezat Hashem. Okay, Chazak Baruch. Laila Tov.
Congratulations.
See you
Thank you.
tomorrow. Bye bye.
Yes.